think video games does get a bad rap, but I think a lot of it has to do with people on the outside not being fully educated. Like, video games are still seen as entertainment for kids.
Yeah.
But, you know, I grew up with video games. I'm in what you would call the core demographic now on 2 of the 3 major systems that are out there. You've got the Wii, which is very much for the family and for the kids, and the content that's there is appropriate for that audience. Mature rated games have come out on the Wii, but they haven't done very well. It's because guys that are my age are playing the Xbox or the PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
And 60 or 70% of that audience is that age, not kids.
Yeah.
So you look at this content, the stuff that comes up in the news, and people bring it up as, oh, it's all these violent video games. Well, it's the audience it's intended for. It's like a rated R movie. It's not intended for the kids that are going to see Disney films.
Yeah, no kidding.
And there's always going to be a problem with kids being exposed to this stuff and watching their older brother or older sister play it, or maybe mom and dad are playing it, and the kid's just going to see it. But you know, I do think we still get kind of a bad rap, and a lot of it has to come down to education, and there are a lot of people that are just, I don't know if ignorant is the right word or naive, but they just don't have an understanding of where the market is now versus where it was 20 years ago was, you know, video games were for kids. They were for the, you know, pre-college year boys, basically, you know, and now it's college-age kids and older. It's all the kids that grew up in the arcades.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. Do you think, like, maybe the generation that sort of was initially introduced to video games is sort of the strongest market for that, and, like, the younger generation is maybe not quite as big a market now? Like, we've had this kind of, I guess it could almost be like the baby boomer generation for video games or something.
I think it all comes down to where you're looking at specifically. So if you look at PC games, for the most part, you know, you get thousands of games that come out in a year on a PC.
Yeah.
And you get things like Warcraft that do really well, Sims that does really well. Sims is predominantly played by women.
Yeah.
Then you look at the other big successful games, and they're kids' games.
Yeah.
Kids play on the PC. Like,
Yeah.
parents aren't going to go buy their 8-year-old kid an Xbox 360. It's $300.
Yeah.
Whereas they could buy a game and play it on the home computer.
Yeah.
It's people that have discretionary income that are dropping $300, $400, sometimes $500 on a console. They want a specific type of content. They don't want to play a game where you're running around, you know, with flowers and cute little things happening. There's no market for that on those consoles.
Yeah.
And it's proven.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the Wii, you've got, you know, games that an 8-year-old can play, games that a 72-year-old can play, and they're not based on violence. They're based on cute little things, you know. A lot of it's motion-based fun. Mm-hmm. So there's something for everybody, and unfortunately, I think games are still getting a bad rap on the whole because of people's preconceived notions about what it all is.
Thank you, man.
No problem.
Are we just waiting out the 10 years till when this isn't an issue anymore? Do you think that's a possibility?
I think as the install base for the more, I'll call them the more mature systems like the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation, I think as those expand, then you might start seeing games that are more appropriate for a younger audience, much like you saw on the PlayStation 2. Mm-hmm. I think, unfortunately, you know, for games like Grand Theft Auto when they came out, as industry defining as they were, they came out at a time where the install base had grown so big that it was inevitable that the younger demographic was going to be exposed to it. And unfortunately, when you're talking to a 12 or 13-year-old, they don't want to play what their little brother's playing. They want to play what their older brother's playing, and that's something I don't think we're ever going to be able to solve. That's just human nature. Mm-hmm. Just like kids that try and sneak into a rated R movie. They know they're not supposed to, but that's what's cool.
Yeah, it's like with pornography and stuff like that.
Exactly.
You know, you find your dad's Playboy or something like that.
Yeah, it's taboo, and there's something exciting about being able to go and do what you're not supposed to.
Yes, the thing that kept sort of popping up in my mind the whole time was when people talked about stuff like that was the Streisand effect. Basically.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, instead of sensationalizing this whole debate of like, oh, you know, these video games are they're destroying our children, stuff like that, the real way to, you know, do any sort of action on this is to just deal with it in a non-sensational way and look at it as like, this is a part of our life. It's you know, we're just going to have to deal with it one way or the other. Why don't we do it in a constructive way?
Yeah, the thing that bothers me is you hear about, you know, all these games that are bad for kids. Nobody focuses on the fact that there is a very large segment of the market that actually is for a younger demographic.
Right.
You don't hear the stories about all these games for them.
I mean, the Nintendo DS is still like pretty close to the #1 console, I believe.
Yeah, it's got the largest install base, and nobody talks about the fact that there's still companies that are very successful, and we are in a commercial marketplace. You know, people make games to make money.
Yeah.
Whether you like that or not, it's a product. Companies need to make money in order to continue making these games. And for something like the DS, they are making games for that audience. And nobody focuses on that. Everybody focuses on, you know, these games that are made for an older generation that are playing different machines. You know, it's frustrating working in the industry and seeing that still happen after all these years.
Now, my next thing though is like, do you think that there has been a game made so far that is sort of I mean, I hate to use the whole Citizen Kane thing, because I think it's kind of I think sometimes films and video games are such a different medium that it's almost limiting to sort of compare them. Do you think that there's been a game that's really sort of snuck in under the radar that's like that is a masterpiece that if more people played, they would appreciate games?
I think there's a great example recently, within the last few weeks. A game came out on the DS called Scribblelands.
Right.
And that is so far the opposite end of the spectrum from something like Grand Theft Auto. It's an exceptional game. It is for a broad demographic, whether you be 8 years old or 35 years old, and everybody has fun playing it. But that's not a story to people. Like, nobody wants to cover this, wow, here's an innovative piece of software that just came out that can open a whole new realm of possibilities when you're playing video games. But everybody still wants to focus on Modern Warfare 2 coming out and its ties to what's going on in the Middle East.
It's so funny to me that there's controversy over Modern Warfare 2 though, because compared to like some of the other stuff, it's really not that ridiculously over the top again.
It's not really over the top, but it's
like a movie.
Yeah, it is. But the topics that are brought up in the game are so closely tied to current events that everybody wants to try to draw a parallel line between what's going on the other side of the world and this video game. And hopefully it's something that will just die down over the next couple of weeks and not be blown out of proportion like it used to be.